My name is Sarah. I'm 29 years old. My own family told me right to my face that I would never be good at anything. But before I tell you how their boss ended up calling me Colonel and saluting me right in front of them, do me a quick favor. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always cool to see how far these stories go. It all came to a big moment at what was supposed to be a nice welcome home dinner. After 5 years away, I had come back to my small town in Idaho. The air in my childhood home smelled like roasted chicken and years of sadness that nobody talked about. At the head of the table sat my dad, Robert. He was a big boss at Apex Defense Systems. That's the biggest company where people work in our state. Across from him, my mom, Linda, was smiling big at my older brother, Michael. He was, and always had been, the favorite kid. Michael just got a big promotion to project manager for the new Aegis 7 contract, my father said, puffing out his chest. It's a $1.5 billion deal with the Pentagon. He's running the whole thing. Oh, honey, that's wonderful, my mother said, gushing over him. Michael loved all the attention and gave me a mean smirk. Then all eyes turned to me. And Sarah's still in the army, my mom said. Her voice had that fake, sweet sound she used when she was embarrassed. That's nice, dear. Michael leaned forward, his fork making a scraping sound on his plate. Honestly, I don't get it. You were always so smart. Why throw it all away to be a paper pusher for the government? You'll never amount to anything in there. A paper pusher. The words hung in the air, sharp and ugly. They talked about our cousin Emily's success in finance, my dad's golf game, anything but my life. They never asked about my work, my rank, what I had accomplished. To them, I had chosen a dead-end path, a hobby, while Michael was conquering the real world. I stayed quiet, a tight knot forming in my stomach. I just looked down at my plate, my hand making a fist under the table. In my duffel bag by the door, my uniform was neatly folded. They had no idea. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my childhood bed. The floral wallpaper seemed to mock me. It felt like I was 16 again, invisible and misunderstood. For a moment, the weight of their judgment was crushing. I almost reached for my phone to call my mentor, General Catherine Hull. I could hear her voice in my head as clear as day from a time I'd been ready to quit years ago. Don't let people living in a fishbowl tell you about the ocean, Sarah. She was right. Their world was this house, this town, this company. My world was bigger. I walked over to my bag and unzipped it. There it was, the deep blue fabric of my Army service uniform. I ran my hand over the sleeve, feeling the crisp, heavy wool. I touched the polished eagle insignia on my shoulder boards. Colonel, one of the youngest in Army history to make the rank. A specialist in a field so important it was changing the face of modern warfare, cybersecurity, the very field the $1.5 billion Aegis 7 contract depended on. The contract my brother was supposedly running. The contract I was sent here to oversee for the Pentagon. The next morning, the house was buzzing with Michael's self-importance. He strutted around in his best suit, briefcase in hand. "Big day at the Apex Leadership Conference," he announced to no one in particular. He caught my eye as I was pouring coffee. "You should tag along, Sarah. See how things work in the real world. Might open your eyes." I gave him a small, thin smile. "I'll be there," I said. He laughed, thinking I was coming to watch him shine. He had no idea I was the keynote government liaison. The storm was coming, and he was walking right into the center of it. I drove to the conference center in my rental car, but I didn't go to the main parking lot. I followed the signs for VIP and official dignitary parking, flashing my credentials to the security guard who snapped to attention and waved me through. In the privacy of my car, I began to change. Off came the jeans and simple t-shirt. the civilian camouflage I'd been wearing. On came the uniform, the starched white shirt, the perfectly tailored blue jacket. I clipped on my ribbons, each one a story, a mission, a success, a sacrifice. Lastly, I pinned the silver eagles to my shoulders. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The hurt, invisible girl from the dinner table was gone. In her place was Colonel Sarah Thompson of the United States Army. I wasn't here to vengeance. I was here to do my job. But I'd be lying if I didn't say there was a small part of me that was ready for the show. I walked into the conference center lobby, a sea of dark suits and expensive cologne. I saw them immediately, my father, mother, and Michael standing in a circle with other Apex executives, laughing and shaking hands. They looked so proud, so completely in their element. Michael was holding court, gesturing wildly as he talked about his project. He was the king of his castle. He spotted me across the lobby. He saw the uniform, but it didn't register. He just saw his little sister in a costume trying to fit in. He nudged his father, a condescending smirk on his face, as if to say, "Look at her playing soldier." At that exact moment, a hush fell on the group, as the CEO, Laura Bennett, a woman known for her iron will and sharp intellect, made her way through the lobby. She was flanked by aides, her presence commanding the entire space. My father and his colleagues straightened their ties, preparing to greet her. Michael puffed up his chest even more. Laura's eyes scanned the room, bypassing everyone. She saw me. Her path changed. She walked directly towards me, ignoring the outstretched hands of the executives, including my father's arm. The smug look on my family's faces began to curdle into confusion. She stopped right in front of me, a warm professional smile on her face. She extended her hand. "Colonel Thompson," she said, her voice clear and carrying across the suddenly silent lobby. "We're glad you could make it. We're ready to begin whenever you are." I shook her hand firmly. "Thank you, Laura. Let's get started." I turned my head just enough to see my family. My father's face was ashen. My mother's hand was clapped over her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. And Michael looked like he'd been struck by lightning. The king's castle had just been demolished by a direct hit. We moved into the main boardroom, the big one, with the mahogany table that seated 40. My family was ushered to seats of honor near the front, a courtesy from my father's position. I took my seat at the head of the table, directly opposite CEO Laura Bennett. The seating chart had listed my spot simply as Pentagon Liaison. Michael was the first to present. He strolled to the podium, trying to recapture his earlier confidence, but his hands were shaking slightly. He launched into his slideshow about the Aegis 7 project, filled with buzzwords and impressive-looking graphics. He spoke about budgets and timelines. It was a performance, and to the untrained eye, it was a good one. He finished with a flourish and looked right at me, a silent challenge. Laura Bennett turned to me. "Colonel, your assessment." I didn't go to the podium. I simply remained seated. "Thank you, Michael," I began, my voice calm and even. "It's a well-designed presentation. However, the core of the project is its cybersecurity framework, and I'm afraid what you've presented is critically flawed." A murmur went through the room. Michael's face turned from pale to red. "Your firewall protocols," I continued, looking directly at him, "are based on a system that's a decade out of date. Your data encryption has a backdoor vulnerability a competent hacker could exploit in under an hour. And the entire system has no effective defense against a zero-day attack, which, as you should know, is the primary threat vector we're facing." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I laid out the facts one after another, each one a precise surgical strike. I wasn't just a paper pusher. This was my world. I commanded it. I saw my father sink lower in his chair, his face buried in his hands. My mother just stared blankly. Michael stood frozen at the podium, utterly exposed. His project, his promotion, his entire sense of superiority. All of it had been dismantled in less than 5 minutes by the little sister he'd written off. The room was dead silent, the only sound of the quiet hum of the projector. As soon as Laura Bennett adjourned the meeting for a recess, my family cornered me in a small private alcove. The fight had drained out of them, replaced by a bewildering mix of shame and disbelief. My father was the first to speak, his voice broken. "Sarah, I had no idea." "Colonel," the word felt foreign and strange in his mouth. My mother just wrung her hands, unable to look at me. Michael stared at the floor, his face a mask of humiliation. I looked at them, at the three people whose approval I had once craved more than anything, and I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. There was only a quiet clarity. "It's not that you didn't know," I said, my voice steady and low, devoid of accusation. It was just a statement of fact. "It's that you never bothered to ask." I let the words hang in the air for a moment, letting the full weight of them land. "That disrespect," I said, finally, looking each of them in the eye, "ends today." I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't need one anymore. I simply turned and walked away, leaving them standing in the silence of what they had broken. 6 months later, the world looked different. I was in my own apartment in Washington, D.C., a place that felt like me, clean, efficient, with the view of the city skyline. My family was visiting for the first time. The awkwardness was palpable, but it was a different kind. It was the awkwardness of trying, of starting over. My father, quieter now, walked over to a frame on my wall. Inside was a copy of a trade journal article. The headline read, "Colonel Thompson's swift overhaul saves $1.5 billion Apex contract, sets new Pentagon standard." He cleared his throat. "I read this about a dozen times," he said, not looking at me. I am so very proud of you, Sarah." It was the first time he'd said those words with what felt like real sincerity. Just then, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find General Catherine Hall smiling warmly. I had invited her for dinner. I wanted them to meet the woman who saw my potential when they saw a failure. I introduced them. The sight of my father, a powerful executive, shaking hands with a 4-star general and looking completely intimidated was something I never thought I'd see. We sat down for dinner, and for the first time, they asked questions, real questions. They asked about my work, about the general's career, about this world they knew nothing about. It wasn't perfect. The wounds were still there, but it was a start, a real one. Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood by my window looking out at the distant glowing marble of the Washington Monument. For so long, I had thought that respect was something you were given, a gift bestowed upon you by others. I was wrong. It's not a gift. It's a space you command. It's a presence you build brick by brick with your own competence and self-worth. You don't ask for it. You just become it. On my desk, my polished silver Colonel insignia caught the light from the city sky. It wasn't hidden in a bag anymore. It was out in the open, right where it belonged. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's a vulnerable thing to share, and I appreciate you all being here. My question for you is this: have you ever had to prove someone wrong in a big way, and how did it change you? I'd love to read your stories in the comments below. It's in sharing these moments that we realize we're not alone. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more. I'll see you in the next one.